Mary, really happy to have you amongst us today. Thank you for accepting this invitation. As I was saying a bit earlier, this is maybe the first ALU career exploration session that we're running this term, and happy to kick it off with you. Just before leaving it on to you to introduce yourself, I'm just circling back on Emmanuel's message that was sent out to students through my account, but it was Emmanuel. So thank you, Emmanuel, for that. Just to relate that Miss Mary Auta holds an MSc, a Master's in Science in Entrepreneurship and Management from the University of Reading in the UK. Before coming to ALU, he worked as a researcher at Boardwalk Leadership in London, as an assistant lecturer for the Faculty of Management Sciences at the University of Jos in Nigeria, and as a finance assistant for the World Bank Rural Access and Mobility Project in Abuja, Nigeria. And these are just a couple of the things that you've done up until now. And I think we're really excited to hear much more about you and what you've achieved throughout the years. So Mary, welcome, and glad to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Jerome. Shout out to Emmanuel for nominating me to do this. I was really excited when I got his message, and I'm just so happy to be joining you today. Hopefully it'll be worth your time, and I just look forward to us just having a great session together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. I'm guessing we'll kick off the conversation by the most simplest of questions is tell us about yourself. So obviously where you come from and what brought you to where you are now, and obviously we'll follow up with some interesting questions as we go along.
All right, thank you, Jerome. My name is Mary Auta. I also have another name, Tonze. You can use that if you can pronounce it well. It's been murdered a couple of times, so I just stick with Mary because that's easy. But if you can actually say Tonze well, that's my preferred name. It means beautiful. So I'm Nigerian, like I said before, and I started out wanting to be a medical doctor. That's a fun fact. And I kind of moved from that dream and look at what I'm doing now. And when I look back, I guess that the most important thing to me was just being able to interact with people. Because I remember going to the doctor's appointment and having really good doctors who would want to get to know me first before the needles would come out and the meds and all of that. So I realized very early that I love to interact with people. And then, of course, I wanted to help people. And more than that, I enjoyed fixing things, especially things that were broken. So I can see why I was drawn to medicine. And pretty much that's what entrepreneurship is. It might not be a natural science, but it's really about going out there to see opportunities where people see problems and saying, how do I apply innovation? How do I make things better? And that's why we have many of the products we have today, enjoying them. You know, I remember a time when it looked like it was impossible to have a mobile device without buttons, but now you can actually touch your phone and tell it what to do. And it does it without actually using any button. It's just amazing what entrepreneurship has done when you look around us. So the dream was medicine. And then in undergrad, I studied economics. And then I think in my second year, it was my sophomore year, my family was at a really crucial point. We were emerging from the lower class to the upper middle class. And we started to explore options. How are we going to invest our savings so that we would not go back to where we were coming from? You know, we were emerging to a new place. And that's where entrepreneurship got my attention. We realized, look, the best thing to do is to invest in business. That's how to grow money. And I just started from there, and I fell in love with, you know, the concept, business, creating new things, going out there, selling the product. And that's pretty much what my journey has been through it all. And then, of course, I heard people say, man, you're really good at teaching. And I never really paid much attention to it. But look at me today. I'm in a faculty role, right? The plan was just to finish my master's and sort of just set up my business. But people kept saying, you're so good at teaching. Have you ever considered being a facilitator? And I thought, okay, I'm going to apply. Probably going to get it. Maybe not. I don't know. But so that's how I started the University of Jos teaching. And then now I'm at ALU, and it's just been such an interesting journey. The feedback I've received from my students so far, though, is proof that I'm on the right path. So I'm really happy about that. Thank you.
Thank you for that intro, Mary. I think that there's a start to everything, and I mentioned you mentioned two things. One of the first things that kind of caught my attention was that you like to fix problems, and I think as we know on the continent that and the role of ALU is exactly that, to create a pool or to create generations of people who are able to identify and find the solutions to African problems. So how did you maybe find your way to this point? I mean, what happened along the way to get you to realize, okay, like this is what this is my path. This is it.
Okay, thank you so much, Jerome. I think that first things first, I had an awakening or reawakening when I went to Reading, right? I went there on a scholarship after I completed my bachelor's at the University of Jos. I got a scholarship, and that's how I got to the UK. And I remember thinking to myself, it finally makes sense. This is what I've been looking for. I realized there was a gap in the educational system that was predominant in Africa. And I think that that's what we're trying to do different at ALU. It was very much someone telling you what to learn, as opposed to self-directed learning, which is what we do at ALU, teaching yourself what you want to learn, you know? So when I first went to Reading, that's when it clicked. I realized there was a massive problem. And then it made sense to me. I was like, well, this is why we have a high volume of graduates in Africa, but a high level of unemployment, because people finish school and they still want people to tell them what to do, you know? So you're done with school, there's still a search for massive white collar jobs. You're still looking for someone to say, this is what you should do. But with the ALU system, it's different. And I think that that's another thing that really inspired me to apply. I saw something different that Fred was doing, and I thought to myself, you know, this is what Africa is missing. This is the problem that needs to be fixed. It's foundational. We need to stop telling people what to learn. People need to be in charge of their own learning. And I can see pushback sometimes. I keep telling my students, you're going to be so happy when you look back on the kind of education you received at ALU, because you'll never wake up trying to have someone tell you what to do. You just sort of be more proactive and take charge of your own learning process. Hi, Jimmy. I can see you in the chat. Hello. Yeah, I hope I answered your question, Jerome.
Oh, totally. And that kind of branches me onto the next question. That we at ALU we don't spoon feed, and we expect that that students take ownership as much as facilitators, staff take ownership of what they do. So when you started out, what did ownership mean to you? Like when you branched out of university and you started into the real world of work, what did ownership mean to you, and what capacity did that take in your adventure?
Well, first of all, I realized that I had like basic skills that were lacking. So I had the traditional education, and that's when I started learning like the MS Word, the Google Suite. So technology was a very big part that was missing. And I think that you have to have your tech skill set, you know, in place to survive in the world of work. If someone has to teach you how to set up a Google Meet call and do the basic tech things, it can be very frustrating. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. You can actually start in the world of work and learn, but it's a lot easier when you come into the world of work and you already know how to do these things, whether it's setting up your own business or working for someone else. So for me, I think the very first part of taking ownership was just taking ownership of the skills that were lacking in me. And for me, it was those tech skills. I remember just saying, you have to know how to use software. You cannot stick with the paper, you know, because my education was very much like paper and pen, you know. Yeah. We didn't really need to use a lot of PCs or computers, but I needed to take ownership of that. And ever since I did, I realized that it opened up more opportunities for me, and I work a lot better than I did before. Yeah. So that was my first step, Jerome.
Thank you for sharing. I think maybe a follow-up question to that was, how did you, and this is something that we work on with students who come to see the SPD or the career dev, formerly known as career dev department, is how do you identify, like through your adventure, through your journey, how did you identify the skills that you were lacking in, and how did you plan to overcome and to acquire these skills to move yourself forward?
Okay, I think there's an interesting concept in academia that's called social signaling. So as I started to interact with my peers, whether it was on LinkedIn or Facebook, I would notice sometimes it was like basic operations. They would be able to do something or they would say something in the course of a conversation, and it would strike like a mental bump in my head. Like, you don't know how to do that. You really should learn how to do that. So every time I had interactions with my peers and I realized that they were a step ahead of me, I always tried to cover that gap. If I encountered a problem, whether it was at home or at work, and I didn't know how to solve it, I always took ownership for it and said, you should know how to do this. If you're facing this problem, then it means that you really do have the skill set to overcome this problem. And then I would get around to learning how to develop that skill. So with simple things like signing up for courses, whatever was out there just to help me grow, whether it was to read a book, join a club, whatever it was, whatever opportunity was out there just to help me grow, I would take advantage of it. And I continue to do that even now. I still do. You'll find me applying for fellowships. And sometimes someone would say, why? I want to learn. I really want to learn, what this is like. So I'm still very much that lifelong learner, even at this stage in my career. Yeah, thank you.
That's beautiful to hear. Thank you so much again, Mary. I just want to maybe send a little message to those to students on the call. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to pop them in the chat box. We'll have a little moment of Q&A a bit later. I don't think we'll go for an hour and a half because 90 minutes of us just throwing back and forth might be a bit too much for everyone. But we'll make do of the time that we have as much as possible. Mary, it seems to me that you have been extremely self-aware since the beginning of your journey. How has this self-awareness maybe brought you to where you are today, first of all? And how have you maybe navigated sometimes maybe a lack in self-awareness and building that self-confidence to say, okay, this is the skill I'm lacking. This is what I have to do to get it. Okay, I'm going to take that leap of faith.
Okay, thank you, Jerome. First of all, my self-awareness has just helped me to leverage on my strengths. So I know what I'm really good at, and it helps me also to prioritize my time. Okay, because I think that time is one of the scarcest resources we have, and I speak of this as an economist. So I try to prioritize my strengths to match with my time. What am I spending my time the most on? It has to be on areas of strength. And I try not to focus so much on my weaknesses as much as I'm trying to overcome them and gain new skill sets. But I leverage more on my strengths. What am I really good at? So I think that that's another thing that I would really want the students to be able to take out of this, rather than trying to compete in a space where you're really not good at. It's more important that you're where you're supposed to be and you will thrive there. And I think that when it's come to areas where I'm not so self-aware, I've never shied away from asking for help. Right? I go back to my peers again. It's so important to develop the right kind of friendships, relationships. I've grown at ALU because of the relationships that I've developed with my teammates within ENT and IBT. So when I hit a roadblock and I don't know what to do, I ask for help. There's no shame in saying, hey, I don't know how to do this. I remember there was a lot of hand holding when I first joined ALU. And now it's so exciting that I can teach others as well. And I can share my knowledge, So I've always been willing to ask for help. Even with my students, I am very open. I'm honest. When I get it wrong, I say, hey, the last time I said this, it wasn't quite right. This is the better way to do things. Okay. So asking for help is one of the ways that I've been able to navigate places where I found myself lacking self-awareness and not being able to uncover blind spots. And my friends, the relationships I've established over the years have really helped me to navigate those tough waters. Yes. Thank you.
Awesome. And I think a lot of students can eventually relate to that as well. Not necessarily being aware of what's lacking, or the fact of it can be hard sometimes to show yourself a bit of vulnerability and saying, I don't know how to do this, and I don't know how to navigate or circumvent this issue. Let me reach out to someone. And I want to reinforce that message as well, that there's so many, as a student at ALU, there's so many resources that you have access to, may it be your facilitators or the people that are on the side or in the backstage, let's say. And it can, once again, this branches really well onto the next question is, what guidance or motivation or help did you seek throughout your formative years, and maybe a mentor? Who did you surround yourself with, and how were they useful to you?
Okay, thank you. The question about mentors is so important. I am very blessed to have mentors who also serve double night and day as my parents. So first things first, it was my mom. You know, I remember growing up and the house was always filled up with books and she was always reading. It was the first time I developed a love for words and reading. I remember going to high school and one time I complained to my peers that sometimes when I would communicate, they would think that I was being aloof. And I remember saying to them, it's not my fault. I read books. I love to read. And this is how I know these words. And sometimes they would say, these words are too big. And I would say, I just love to read. You should read too. And maybe you would understand. And you know, the same thing is in me right now. When I'm reading a book and I see a word I don't know the meaning of, you know, I would search it up and I would go, oh, okay, this is interesting. So my parents served as role models. And I was also fortunate to be surrounded by women who were educated. There was such an emphasis when I was growing up on a woman getting an education, which is very rare in the part of Nigeria I grew up in. I grew up in northern Nigeria. And the average is that, you know, once a girl is about 16, 17, she gets married off. I was so fortunate, you know, not to be in that category, you know, and it was just so important. Right now, there's still an emphasis, you know, with my parents saying, when are you going to do your PhD? You know, when are you starting it? I still have, you know, that support system. And I've seen women thrive and succeed. And it's giving me the courage to try as well, you know, as opposed to the part of Nigeria I grew up in where it's very male dominated and it's all about men going out there and do great things. I was just fortunate to have my mom, my aunts, my cousins, you know, who served as really great role models and continue to inspire me and motivate me, even when I would feel sometimes like quitting. I'll tell you a funny story. When I first went to the UK and I got my first test result, I remember looking at it. I think I had about 56 over 100. And I thought to myself, this is not good. You're a scholarship student. You should just probably go and tell them that you're going to quit. You don't want to bring disgrace to the school and just go back home. And I had a conversation with my mom and she said, no, you can do this. Fast forward 1 year later, I was graduating best student. This is someone who almost gave up her scholarship to go back home, you know. But my mom said, no, you can do this. Approach your tutors, tell them you don't understand these concepts, ask them for guidance. And again, she was asking me to ask for help, which is so important, you know, and that's how I got the guidance that I needed. And I was able to graduate successfully, you know, so it's just been such a blessing to be surrounded by a good support system. My parents, my siblings, it's been very, very good. What would I say to those who are not fortunate to have that? Again, I would say that you can still find out people in your community. And I found that people who come from the toughest backgrounds where they've experienced a lot of hardship are usually willing to help others and lift them up, right? So you can still search out mentors. I know that here at ALU, I have served as a mentor to a couple of students. My email is always available. I'm able to speak to them, share with them my journey, support them with their own journeys. So search out people, you know, and approach them and say, hey, I admire what you're doing. I've read your story or I've listened to your story and I would like to learn more about you and work with you, and volunteer to help them. You know, mentorship can sometimes be awkward because it looks like, oh, we have to set up meetings. Sometimes it's just doing life with the person. Oh, hey, do you need help with this? You know, I'm available. I can help you type something. I can, you know, just one thing or the other, and you get to spend time with them and you learn and you work with them. That's an alternative if you really don't have that support system in your background. Thank you.
Thank you. So many gems being dropped here, students. I really hope you're actively listening to all of this. I certainly am. I'm taking a couple of notes as well. Maybe moving towards a bit more of your story and your accomplishments. We obviously send out messaging to students to get them to engage with the session. Apart from the accomplishments and achievements, which I briefly mentioned whilst introducing you, what other accomplishments or achievements do you have that you hold really close to your heart? They might not obviously be the biggest achievements ever or the biggest achievements for you, but they are yours. So what are those and why do you keep them close to your heart?
This is a really good question, Jerome. So I'm going to start with an accomplishment that might not look like one, but totally is. I learned how to overcome failure. Okay. So I remember I was 19 years old, the very first time I received a fail grade on a report sheet. I've been through school 18 years. I never failed before. I remember just looking at my first F and I was like, what is this? And it had enormous consequences. It had enormous consequences. I said to you, I went to a conventional university. This was an ALU. I couldn't do a retake. So guys, this is what it meant. Every year, I needed to sit an exam with people who were 1 year behind me every year for 3 years. It was humiliating. And it was physical classes. It was not Zoom. I needed to sit in the classes with them. They knew that I was a year ahead of them. It was so humiliating, but I did it for 3 years and I did not die. I remember crying my eyes out, trying to change unis. It never worked out. So I just had to go through that experience for 3 years. And I did not let it define me. Okay. I didn't let it define me because if it did, there's no way I would have graduated then in my master's best student. I put that failure behind me and I said to myself, a fail grade is not who you are. It is not who you are. It's a bump in the road. You overcome it. You get past it, right? Those 3 years were really rough. I had people who were a year behind me who stopped talking to me. So socially, my life was almost dead in school. It was like, no, nobody wants to associate with the failure, but all of them talk to me today, right? I have this cool ALU job now, right? So for me, I think that that's one of my biggest accomplishments, not letting failure define who I am, learning that failure is not who you are. You do not need to internalize your failure. You can recognize it as something that has happened, but it doesn't define who you are. And the second thing would be teaching my first set of MBA students when I was 26. I remember walking into class. I know. I remember walking into class with these executives in their 30s, their 40s. I even had people in their 50s. And I remember thinking, what am I doing? But I had a senior colleague at the University of Jos, Dr. Dakong. He believed in me. He said, Mary, you can do this. I remember shaking. I was like, I'm 26. I don't know anything. He said, you have done the groundwork. You've done the research. You can teach. I know what's inside of you. And that was one of the best experiences I had teaching. I learned from them. They learned from me. It was just such an exciting experience to interact with people from different organizations all across Nigeria. Some of them were working all across the country. And, in class, we would share our experiences. It was amazing. And at the end of that year, I got an award, a teaching award for excellence in teaching from that class. And it was just so good that they appreciated me. They didn't look down at me. They respected me. It was great. It was a learning experience for both them and myself. And every time I think I'm too small to do something, I remember that and I go, you thought MBAs at 26, you can do it. So that's definitely one of the accomplishments that's really close to my heart. I'm glad that I had a mentor again at work who believed in my ability, and I'm really happy that I took it on. Yeah. Thank you, Jerome.
Awesome. So again, so many gems. I'm listening and it's like listening to a song or listening to a podcast that I'm not going to get fed up. I think that obviously the story is extremely inspiring in a sense that I don't know if all the students realize this, but you have such a positive outlook on what you do. And that brings me to my next question. How did you build that resilience? How did you build that positive outlook on your own life and your professional and personal pathway?
Okay, I think one of the things I love to do is to read. And I think that reading has the ability to take you out of your immediate circumstances, your immediate environment, and take you to different parts of the world. You find out that the challenges you're facing are not quite as serious as you think you are when you expose your mind to reading and learning. You read. I love to read biographies. I love to read about the stories of other people. I remember reading the story of one of the presidents of the United States. I think was it Thomas Jefferson? I found it very inspiring. So I love to read stories about other people, how they overcome, how they thrive. Every time I meet an interesting person, whether it's in person or on television or radio, I want to read their life story. And that's one of the things that's really helped me. So I've been described as a powerful storyteller, and I think it's because I enjoy reading stories as well. So read, talk with people. You would be amazed at some of the adversity that people have been through and are still going through and are standing, whether it's your colleagues at work or those at school. You would be amazed at the things that people go through and still show up and put a smile on their face, and you can encourage them and they can encourage you as well. So back to people. I'm a very people-oriented person. I love to meet them in person. I love to meet them in books. So that's definitely one of the ways that I've been able to maintain a positive outlook in life. And of course, my faith. I'm Christian, and I'm so happy that I've been surrounded by a warm, loving Christian community. Not perfect. Sometimes they drive me up the wall, and I do the same. Church can be one of the craziest places to be in. Christians here will bear me witness, but we're crazy and we love each other, not the same. So I've been blessed as well to have that faith, that grounding that keeps me even when life is really hard. Yeah, thank you.
Again, I don't think I'm going to stop saying this, but so many, I either call them gems or I either call them truth bombs. And I think our students are privy to quite the amount of them today. We talk about people, right? And I think what we do is, obviously we wouldn't be doing it if people weren't involved, or helping people to grow and open their minds to other things wasn't involved. I'm curious, and this is not let's say a formal question. I'm curious about how you were maybe as a younger child, and how that child maybe grew into a very self-confident and assertive woman, able to break barriers and bring people to the forefront of their own talent and storytell, to be able to inspire change and other people. So tell us a bit about your upbringing and how how you as a child evolved into the woman you are today.
All right, thank you. I think as a child, I was described very often as stubborn, and that's because I would not hear an instruction and just do it. I would always ask the question, why? Why do you want me to go to bed at 8 p.m.? Why? Why can't I stay awake till midnight? I was always asking the question, why? And now I'm going to wear my Nigerian accent. My mom would say, this girl, you're very stubborn. No, I've told you to do something and you will not do it. I was always asking her, why? Why do you want me to do something? Why do you want me to do this, Dad? So I was very inquisitive as a child. I wanted to understand why things worked the way they did. I would not just take an instruction or just take a fact, and again, I speak about my mom, who's incredibly intelligent. She's an architect. I would pass by a building or pass by something. I would say, Mom, why do cars work the way that they do? Why is that building standing the way that it is? And she would always try her very best to provide me with answers. The answer she did not have, she would buy me a book to say, well, now you have an encyclopedia. Go and look at it and find your answer there. So that's the kind of child I was. And I think I'm very much that child till today. I'm still asking, I'm still learning, I'm still growing. The world continues to fascinate me. I love to travel. I love to see new places, to learn about life, experience different cultures. I remember going to Poland, and I shared this story once, and I remember just listening to the way they would pronounce the words, because before I went to Warsaw, I thought that that's how it was pronounced. And then I learned it's pronounced Warszawa. So I remember hanging out with friends one time, yes. And then I said to them, tomorrow we're going to Warszawa. And then there was this guy who turned around and looked at me like, what did you say? Like a local? And I it's just such a warm experience for me. So I still love to learn. I'm very curious. I just love to explore, learn more about other people, especially people who are different from me. Especially people who are different from me. Like I mentioned about being Christian, but I have friends who are Buddhists, who are Muslims, and I want to understand that, So I love to explore. I like to know where other people are coming from, what their experiences are like, and it helps me to appreciate the world that I live in better. Yeah. Thank you.
That's beautiful. It helps you to appreciate the world you live in better. I think that's beautiful. You mentioned as well that can we Sorry, I'm just muting
No,
people.
okay.
Sorry about that. So something I picked on when you were talking about that you would be curious and ask questions, and the questions that your mum couldn't answer you, she would buy you a book. And I relate that directly to her empowering you to take ownership of your own pathway, of your own education, of your own curiosity. How do you now, obviously apart from being a faculty member at ALU, how do you maybe, let's say, transpose that, or is that something that you've carried forward, like from generation to generation? How so?
Definitely, definitely. So for me, it's sharing opportunities. Okay. Whenever I see an opportunity, I know that my students can learn from it. I know that, they can grow from this opportunity, especially when it looks really tough. I'll throw it their way. Try this out, try this new thing out and let me know how it goes, and sometimes they complain, but at the end of the day, there's always that grateful attitude that comes forth, like, thank you for throwing me out there and I learned something in the process. And it's very much the culture that is at ALU. I know that a senior member of management did that for me recently. We're just thrown into the same breakout room at FLD, and he said, hey, there's this interesting opportunity, try it out. And he exposed me to a brand new world. I was like, wow, I did not know this existed. So I still do it for people. There are 1,001 opportunities out there. Whenever I see them, I share them on my social media pages, like, try this out. If there's a call for applications for something, just try it out and see, or share resources, especially my students. I try to tell them, you need to take ownership of your own learning, YouTube, a number of resources out there, just try them out and learn and grow. So I still do the same thing that she did for me. I still do pretty much the same thing. Thank you.
That's beautiful. That's, I think, one of the most beautiful, let's say, it's your heritage, like you bringing forward what you've learned and what you were given, and providing that to other people. And I already say thank you for that, because might not be directly, but you're giving that to us on the call today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Most welcome. So we talked a bit about your different achievements and accomplishments a bit earlier on. We didn't talk as much about the let's say multi-industry or multi-sectors that you've discovered and been a part of, and how that actually helped you to set yourself up. So could you take us through maybe a couple of the learnings or a couple of the sectors and industries you've been a part of, and how they contributed to the decisions that you took to be where you are today?
Okay, thank you. So right out of uni, I did the rural access, and I'm sorry, there's someone at the door. Can I have a minute to answer the door?
Sure. No problem, Mary.
Okay, thank you. I just heard a knock. Thank you.
In the meantime, students, if you have any questions or you're curious about anything, please do pop your questions into the chat box, and we'll take a moment to ask them, or you can ask them yourselves during the Q&A at the end of the session. I hope everything's going well. I certainly am having fun. Please let me know, or let us know, how you're finding the session and how you're finding what Mary is sharing with us, which personally I found so inspiring, and the energy is just so contagious. I can see a couple of comments. Okay, Mary's back.
I'm back. Keep the questions coming. So right out of uni, that's when I took on the World Bank job, and I was a finance assistant. At that time, I didn't know a lot about accounting, but I was willing to learn. So it was the first time I was exposed to like Sage, which is an accounting software, and I learned how to use that. And the industry there was actually one of engineering and construction. So I just finished economics, and you think that I would be doing something in that industry. Here I was in a completely different industry where roads were being built in rural communities. And it gave me a chance just to see how the World Bank is working in underdeveloped countries, right? I always wondered what they did. I'd always been curious, what does the World Bank, what does IMF do? But working with that project just gave me an idea about their work here, how they're collaborating with the Nigerian government to build roads all across rural communities in Nigeria. So that's the very first industry I worked in. So there was a lot of construction there. I learned a lot about engineering. And at the same time, I learned a lot about accounting. Okay. And then after that, I went for my master's. And then it was after the master's, I then worked, oh my word. Today, there are just so many people. Did you hear the clocking? I have to be at the door again. A minute, guys. I'm so sorry.
No worries. No worries.
One more minute.
I think this is the beautiful proof of working from home and participating in these live and virtual sessions, is that life still catches up with us, and life never stops pretty much. And that's always a good thing from my experience. Don't forget to drop in the chat box any questions, your feelings about today's session, anything that might have sparked your curiosity or made you feel a certain way. Please don't hesitate to put that in the chat box. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then after my master's, I think there's something that Fred said that caught my attention and has just stuck in my head ever since. Fred said, without opportunity, talent is just a compliment, right? And
Wow.
I'll explain what that means. Yes, without opportunity, talent is just a compliment. So actually, I got my very first gig after my master's through one of my tutors at Reading. She had a company, Boardwalk Leadership, and she saw my performance in class and she thought, Mary, would you like to come and work, with me? And I was stunned. I remember thinking, wow, this is awesome. I knew she was faculty, but I didn't know she was a CEO, right? So that was the very first research gig I got to do. We worked on the Commonwealth project together in collaboration with the British government. It was really interesting just to explore the Commonwealth countries. We were preparing for the Commonwealth heads of government meeting at that time. And we were looking at women in leadership positions, whether it was board positions, C-suite, everything leadership, even looking at higher education. And I found out there were very few women who were in charge of higher education in Africa. So that's what that project was like. It was really, really interesting to work with her and present the report at such an important meeting in London in 2018. It was really, really cool. So I did that. And afterwards, I came back to Nigeria. And that's kind of how I got into teaching my faculty role. Everyone started to say once I was back home, you're great at teaching, you're great at teaching, you're great at teaching. And I was fortunate to be able to get a job at my alma mater. My professors were happy to have me back again. And that's kind of how my journey went from there, and then ALU. So yeah, that's pretty much a summary of my journey so far, moving from one industry to the other and just gleaning. And remember what I said, relationships. If I didn't have a good relationship with my tutor, I don't think I would have landed a job with her, right? There was no corruption, guys. Nothing like that. This was just me working well with someone, and she said, come and work with me. That was it. I didn't pay a bribe. There was nothing like that. Nothing like that. And then I started to work with her in London. That's really the story. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you once again, Mary.
So if you have a question? Thank you.
Let's see, in the chat box, we're expiring. Someone's saying, Bonke is saying, somebody pass me a pen. My ink is running out and I'll need to take a new notebook. All right, very exciting, insightful journey. No questions until now. Please don't hesitate to insert your questions to the chat box, guys. Yeah, moving forward, it obviously being part of these various industries, meeting all these different people, it seems to me that, well, obviously, through studies in the entrepreneurial realm, let's say, and your master's, leadership, and all these beautiful things culminating into this experience right now, I'm sure you have the feeling of being where you're supposed to. First of all, maybe the first part of the question would be, have you always felt like that? And if not, like being where you're supposed to? And if not, how did you overcome not having that feeling?
Thank you. That's a really good question. So I'm glad that I listened to my friends. First of all, I'm also glad that I had people around me who could spot out that I was good at teaching, because I never saw in my future. Never. I really didn't think I was going to end up teaching and loving it so much. I just knew that I love to interact with people, but I definitely feel that I am where I'm supposed to be. And remember that this was not something that I identified myself. I can't even take credit for that. It was my friends and family who said to me, "We think you're going to be a really great teacher. We love how you explain basic concepts to us," and they kind of just stick. So is the work at ALU taxing? Has the work that I've experienced in my career being taxing? Yes. But I think that through the different industries I worked in, education, higher education specifically, has been the one that I've connected the most with. So remember, I worked as a finance assistant, basically just helping out with the accounting at the World Bank project. And then I did research with Shahina's company. That's the name of my tutor. And then I started to teach. I think this is the one that I connect most with. And how do I know? It's feedback. It's always such a joy, Jerome. I tell you, sometimes when I open my email and I see an email or I see a chat from a student saying, "Mary, thank you. You thought us this. I got this from last term." And it was just, I remember thinking, who says the teachers get their reward in heaven? They start to get them here. I was smiling ear to ear with the last message that I got. And every single time a student reaches out to me and says to me, "Mary, thank you. You helped me to understand this," or "You inspired me," or it helps me to know that, yes, this is totally where I'm supposed to be, because I'm making an impact and I'm helping people also discover their greatness. So I remember the other day I was like, that you're in the right spot when you're exhausted, yet sometimes I literally have to pull myself away from my PC, Jero. I'm tired. There are times I work until 9 p.m. By the way, I read your feature on the weekly bulletin. I was blown away. And I remember thinking, wow, I've got to try that out. Allocating different spaces in the house for different things, because sometimes my bedroom becomes my office and I'm there until 9. And you'll hear me going, "I'm tired," but I still want to keep going on. As long as it's about my students and it's about teaching, I want to. I've done office hours at 8 p.m. I'll tell you this. Just for the love of it. I said to my students, if you're working late, I can do an office hour with you much later and just help you out. I know I've done an 8 p.m. office hour more than one time. And if I was not where I was supposed to be, I wouldn't be doing that. So a good thing to do is to listen. Sometimes you might not even know what you're really good at, because that's my experience. I did not know that I would thrive at this, but I was willing to listen. People saw the potential in me and I listened to them. And I definitely feel like I'm supposed to be where I am. Definitely. Yeah.
I think that's beautiful to hear. I think it requires a lot of discovery of oneself and one's surrounding as well, to actually be able to set yourself up. And that's why we engage in such activities. I think that's my take on it. And maybe a much more informal question to get to know, what's going on in your brain and in your mind. If we were to go back 5, 10, let's say 10 years, and you hadn't chosen your degree program yet, you hadn't chosen your master's program yet, what would you have gone into? What would have been your choice now, looking back on your career?
That's a really interesting question, Jerome. I say that because I now look back with hindsight and I realize I really could have been anything I wanted to be, anything at all. There was a lot of self-limitation at some point. There are times when I felt like I wasn't good enough to do this, or I couldn't do that. But now that I look back, I know that I could have been anything. But to specifically answer your question, I would probably be in radio. I would probably be in radio. Yes, I would probably be in radio. That's just something about my speaking voice that people seem to appreciate. So I would probably be doing radio, or I would have stuck with my first dream and just gone on to be a surgeon. Yeah, so that I could tear people open and kind of fix stuff inside of them. Yeah, so one of the two, very extreme. I would probably be a surgeon, or I would be in radio using my voice in a different way. Yeah.
I think I imagine it to be maybe it's still you maybe fixing problems and maybe finding ways on how to make things better. May it be through you communicating only through your voice on a radio or you being a surgeon. I think from what I see, and I hope the students see this as well and discover this for themselves, it's innate. It's an innate in you. This is inside of you, that passion for people and drive to drive growth. And that what I urge is for students on the call is to find that innate thing that drives you and sparks joy inside of you, and find it and dig for it. If it can take a couple of years, it can take 3, 4, 5 years, but as long as you dig, you're going to find that diamond at some point. So yeah, just a side note maybe. Is there because obviously you read a lot and you seem to be a massive bookworm. Is there, first of all, an author that you hold close to your heart? And if yes, well, I think obviously there is, but is there a quote either from that author or from someone else that has stayed close to your heart and that you come out with often?
Thank you. I think off the top of my head, it would have to be Rick Warren and the book, The Purpose-Driven Life. I read that book when I was 12 years old, and it completely changed the way that I thought, the way that I saw my future, envisioned the future. It would have to be, if you haven't read that book, please do. At some point, you're going to have to ask yourself, what is my purpose? And I got really curious very early in life. I was 12 and I was asking that question. Why am I here on earth? What am I placed on this earth to do? And the purpose-driven life helped me to come to that conclusion that I was here to help people, to fix things. It was what I was really good at, finding problems and being able to solve them according to my strengths. So it's so important that you know that, because it helps you to overcome the low days. And those days will come. I've said them, I've shared some of my experience. Those days will come. But if you know why you're here on earth, you know what your purpose is, you will find a way to bounce back and just keep going at it, so it's so important to know what your purpose is and stick with it, and you will thrive. You actually will do well once you find out what your purpose is. So Rick Warren, definitely the book I will recommend to everyone. Go find the e-copy and read up. Yeah. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Mary. And is there a quote that you keep close to heart as well? Something that you can just say to yourself, just to wake yourself up or feel better again.
Definitely. This quote I came up with during my master's, and this is the simple quote: hard and impossible are not the same thing. I'll say it again. Wow. Hard and impossible are not the same thing. Just because something is hard does not mean that it's impossible. Okay, there's this wide gap between something that is hard and something that is impossible. So many things are hard, but very few things in life are actually impossible. Very, very few things in life are impossible, but a lot of things are hard, and people just quit because they misplace the categories. They take hard and put it in, impossible section, and it's not. Okay, so just because something is difficult to do does not mean it cannot be achieved. It absolutely can. It can be achieved. I'll give you another story. I remember that because I've got 4 siblings. I remember that when one of my brothers was about 7, he was such a huge fan of Ben 10. That was the cartoon called Ben 10. Very huge fan of Ben 10. And he said he wanted a Ben 10 school bag. I remember. So we scouted the entire shops in Jos, went through every single possible school bag selling shop in Jos, and there was not a Ben 10 bag. This boy was just 7. He looked at my mom and said, if it's not Ben 10, I'm not going to school. I want a Ben 10 bag. And I remember thinking, where on earth do you want us to find this? He said, I want a Ben 10 bag. If I'm not getting it, I'm not going to school. Now, there was a shop where the guy saw how determined my brother was and said, you know what? I don't have this in my store, but I'm going to make a search online and I'm going to reach out to other retailers. And if that Ben 10 bag actually does exist, I'm going to get it to you. Cut a long story short, my brother got his bag and it was Ben 10. They had to scout the whole country, but they got it. And it was Ben 10. And I remember thinking, wow, this is a 7-year-old. He knew this was hard, but he knew it was not impossible. He said to us, there has to be a Ben 10 bag out there somewhere, and he got it. So how determined are you to pursue your dreams? People are going to say no to you year after year, time after time. You're going to get a lot of doors slammed in your face. But guess what? If Fred listened to all the doors that were slammed in his face, we wouldn't be here right now. ALU would not exist. The hundreds of jobs that he's created would not be in existence. Okay, so you would be amazed at how many no's he got before he started to hear a yes. So never ever give up just because something is hard. If you're convinced in your heart that this is the path to follow, stick with it. Stick with it, and you will definitely achieve success at the end of the day. That's my quote. Hard and impossible and not the same thing.
Same thing.
Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Mary. I'm gonna maybe branch out to a question concerning the entrepreneurial mindset, because we are very high on entrepreneurship and the entrepreneurial mindset at ALU. May you be studying social sciences, global challenges, entrepreneurship, or whichever the degree program that you're on, the entrepreneurial mindset forms part of every single one of them, pertaining to ALU's mission and your own mission as individuals. So I would like to know from you, Mary, what are the essentials? What are the basic essentials of an entrepreneurial mindset, and how do we plant that seed as an individual and make sure it is watered and given the right conditions to thrive as an individual?
All right, thank you, Jerome. First things first, an entrepreneur must be proactive. It's such a key element of the entrepreneurial mindset. It's the ability to be able to direct yourself, whether it's your learning, whether it's your journey, finding a problem and finding the solution, but you have to be proactive. You rarely find an entrepreneur who's waiting to be told what to do. They usually want to go out there and conquer, right? And it could be a big problem. It could be a small problem. It could be a minute problem, but it's supposed to be worthy of your attention, and then you're going to have to go after it and say, I want to solve this. So there's that proactivity, not waiting around to be told this is what you're supposed to do. I know there's a problem in Africa or in this corner of Africa where I'm living. I want to go after that. Okay. The learner's mindset is so important. Entrepreneurs are learning every day. You need to be flexible. One of the things that investors look out for in your team is how learnable that team is. Okay. Do you have a team who has their minds fixed on a certain product? It has to be the software. We're not changing anything about it. The prototype must stay the same. The beta testing must stay the same. No, you need to be flexible to learn, to grow, okay? Because the field evolves and the problems evolve. Okay, so we've had problems, for example, of global warming. And they date back to 50 years ago. And the challenges we're facing today are not the challenges we were facing 50 years ago. So the entrepreneurs that are facing global warming would have that we're facing it 50 years ago, and those who are facing it today might have divergent perspectives because the problem continues to evolve. First it was just about the gas emissions, but now it's about dumping a lot of chemicals and plastics in the oceans. There's so many facets to it. So every day the problems continue to evolve. So it's so important for an entrepreneur to have that learner's mindset, to grow as the situation changes. You also have to be flexible. It's very important. The third element, and this is often overlooked, is integrity. Integrity is so key. You won't see this in a tech book, but it is so important that an investor can trust you with their money. It is very, very important. Recently we've had scandals, okay, in Silicon Valley, and I wouldn't want to mention any names just because the product that she was trying to convince investors about actually didn't exist, okay? Those of you who are familiar with the story know what I'm talking about, okay? And this was a $1 billion unicorn business, but it was sold on a lie. So integrity is so, so important. And I think that that's what we're trying to achieve at ALU. So it's not just about the books. Ethics also matter. It's so important that someone, especially an investor, can trust you with your resources and be sure that at the end of the day, they will not be mismanaged. So I say to my students, if you get an investment of $1 billion, your first thought should not be, I need to buy a Ferrari. No, that should be invested in operations, in sales, in marketing, in R&D. Not, I need to get myself a Ferrari. No, that's not what Zuckerberg did when he got investments from Facebook. Otherwise, it wouldn't have grown into metaverse today, right? So please, integrity is so important. So I'll come back again. Be proactive. It's so, so important. Be proactive. Have a learner's mindset. You must be a lifelong learner, and you must have integrity. People must be able to trust you to keep your word and actually do what you say you will do. Yes. Thank you.
Wow, beautiful, beautiful. I have no words. That kind of reminds me that the proactiveness of and that you said that the importance of being proactive as an entrepreneur. I recently learned that the 4 Ps, there's 4 Ps. So there's being positive, being proactive, being principled, and being productive. And it's amazing for me to see, and I hope for students as well on this call, that you kind of embody all 4 of these traits. You are extremely positive. You seem to be someone who is so productive in their work with students and the outcome that you set yourself out to have. You seem to have extremely strong work ethic and you know, strong principles. And on top of that, you seem to be very proactive as well. So maybe before like a little closing credit before we go on to the Q&A with students, let me formulate this question because it just popped into my mind. Would these 4 traits be something that are these 4 traits something that you just, you know, automatically and naturally upskilled yourself in or got better at, or were you conscious of these traits when you were going through your journey?
Yeah, so you noticed that I was looking down. I was actually typing what you were saying on my phone. And that's a habit I have. Why? Because you only remember 5% of what you hear. If you don't write stuff down, you forget it. So guys, if you're not taking notes, you'll forget most of what I said in this session. So as soon as Jerome started talking, I just started to type. And I've got so many notes, like so many notes, because once I hear wisdom, I just want to put it down so that I can come back to it and think about it over and over and over again. And that was something I learned, I think, at a seminar or something, where I realized that you only remember 5%, only 5%. So you will be wasting your time if you attend sessions and you don't take down notes, because it'll be done and you'd go, oh, it left me feeling good, or it left me feeling confused or bad, but you don't even really remember what was discussed. So notes are so important. Jerome, no, I am not perfect. I wasn't born principled, positive, proactive. Every experience that I went through in life taught me something. Okay, so I'm all about the lesson. I'm all about the lesson. And at the end of my interaction with anyone, at the end of the day, I like to do a review. Did I give my best today, or did I not? And what did I learn from the people that I interacted with today? Did I make their lives better, or did I make their lives harder? It's always so important for me at the end of every day, just a few minutes before I fall asleep, to kind of think about my day and ask myself, how can I do better? And some of my biggest lessons are born out of my biggest mistakes. Okay, I never let them define me. I look for the lesson and I ask myself, if I'm faced with this situation tomorrow, how do I ensure that I do better? How do I make sure that I'm more prepared to handle this a lot better? So no, I wasn't born with this, but I picked it up. And like I said, I've always believed in opportunities, learning opportunities. Okay, so whenever there's a learning opportunity, please attend. Right. I would have missed out on that opportunity at FLD if I joined that breakout room. And you know, the funny thing, Jerome, there were 4 of us in that breakout room, but okay, now I'm going to let the bag out of the cat out of the bag. It was John Hall and myself, ALU's CTO. There were 4 of us in that breakout room, but John and I, at the end of the day, were the ones interacting, and a huge opportunity came out of it. I got enrolled in an entrepreneurship course at Cornell University. That's something you go through screening and screening and screening to get into. And just because I had that conversation with John, he was so kind to forward my name and I got enrolled in that course. Okay, so take advantage of opportunities. And if you must do anything, be present. I would say to people, if you're not going to be present at something, whether it's a class or a meeting, it's better that you do not attend. But if you're actually going to spend your time attending something, engage your mind with it. Like, be present, be there, participate, engage with the content. That's how you learn. That's how you grow. But if you're not, please don't join classes on Zoom and then go away. Because at the end of the day, you don't learn anything and you're not fooling anyone, to be honest, but yourself. So you have to weigh your priorities. If you have something else to do that you believe is more important than a class at the point in time, I would say don't attend the class and face that thing. If you believe that it's more of a priority, but if the class is more of a priority, then when you join it, you should totally engage with it. So Jerome, no, I had to learn and I'm still learning every day from every life experience. And that's how I grow, by learning. Because nobody is born with the complete manual in their head. And people are still trying to figure life out every day. We're still trying to figure life out. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think that you hit the nail right on the head there. I mean, it's a continuous process, and we're never done learning. And I think maybe the most important thing I relate to from what you've shared, Mary, is the fact that it can come from anyone. It can really come from anyone. Every single interaction of every single day, whether it be at the supermarket or at work in a meeting or with someone in your network, your family, your friends, learning can happen at any time, anywhere, with anyone. And that's what's amazing about it. And it's just so easy to engage with if we put ourselves in that position to engage with it. If we're curious and we ask questions, and it's just, I mean, how am I to put this in one, let's say, poetic sentence? I'm not feeling poetic today, but I think everyone catches the drift. So yeah. we're moving towards the last, let's say, quarter of an hour of the session. I'm going to open the floor to our students to raise their hands, unmute, or share in the chat box any questions you might have, something that you're curious about based on anything that Mary has shared, or something that you would like for us, Mary, to share with everyone else. So please raise your hands. This is an opportunity to grow and to learn. So please do not hesitate, engage, and we'll be happy to entertain your questions. So who has the first question? This is always the trickiest part of sessions. do you get that too, Mary?
I do, Jerome. After the first question, that's it. The questions will just start to roll in. The first one.
Annie, I can see Annie. You online? Can you hear us?
Yes. Yeah.
Go for it, Annie. Ask your question.
The Nigerian has to be there. You have to be there. Maybe I just have one very simple question. Ms. Mary, talk about finding mentors. Do you want to be my mentor?
You and I can have a conversation about that. Just send me an email and we can pick it up from there, okay?
No problem.
All right, cool. Cool.
Thank you for that question, Annie. Please, anyone else with a question, be curious. All right, I can see Faith, you have a question. Please do unmute.
First of all, this was an amazing session. Secondly, the guest is awesome. I just wanted to, from what you've shared today, I can tell that you've done a lot in life and you've been in so many spaces and you've just literally done so much. I just want to, how did you keep going? Because sometimes it gets hard. It just gets hard. So how did you keep pushing? Because I can see that you still have the same drive as maybe the one you had maybe years ago. So how do you keep this passion and energy going, even in hard situations? And also, which faculty do you belong? Which faculty are you in? Are you in a GC facilitator, IBT? Which one?
Entrepreneurship.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
What
sad.
department are you in?
GC, Global
I
Challenges,
see. Global Challenges. What year are you in?
second year.
Okay. Third year, I actually take a course in GC, but it's for entrepreneurship students. But yeah, we could probably do a joint session, and then we get to interact in class. To answer your question, I've been fortunate to have a very strong family support system. And I said that if you don't have that, then you might have to depend on your peers to give you that support. Because I know that not everyone has a family that is close knit for one reason or the other. So I'm just very fortunate to have a support system from my family. But if you don't have that, parent-wise or siblings, then you can join networks that actually already exist and get that support from your peers. People who genuinely will support you and cheer you on and help you to grow. Yes, so that's one of the ways that I've been able to just keep going on. Remember having that call with my mom, and she said to me, "You're not going to quit your program and give up your scholarship and come to Nigeria." I'm not even saying it properly. She's like, "You're not coming back to Nigeria. Oh. You better stay there." And she said to me, "No, you are not coming home. Stick with your program. You were given a scholarship for a reason. You can do it." And I'm glad I listened to her. So I'm so glad I listened to her. Yes. So this is how I've just kept going. A support system, which is why I'm just so centered on people. I love people so much because they've been helpful my entire journey. I think I can see Colleen's hand up.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Colleen,
Oh,
please
yes.
unmute.
So to begin with, I really would like to say I really found this session quite inspiring, and it's so good to hear your voice again and actually to see you again.
Yeah.
So my question is, have you ever considered venturing more into like storytelling or maybe writing stories? Because I really, really enjoyed like listening to your stories. Yeah.
Wow. So I'm just going to add that to my 2022 list. Wow. Wow. This is an entrepreneurial opportunity I should have passed off on. Remember how I listened to people about being faculty, and look at how well it's going. So Colleen, now I know I have my first customer. If I write that story, I have my very first customer, and hopefully I have more customers in this session who would actually read that story. So thank you for encouraging me to do that. I actually love to tell stories, never thought about penning them down, but I think I will seriously consider that right now. Yeah, I will.
Yeah, definitely. You can count on me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Colleen. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
So we have another hand raised. Mami Diara, please do unmute and ask your question.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we
We
can.
can.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for this session, Mary. I think this is like the longest Zoom call I've ever been into.
Wow.
And I was like enjoying every piece and every bit of it. And I think it's a huge loss for GC students to not have you. And entrepreneurship students, they're the luckiest ever. And I would love, I don't know if this is feasible or not, but having you guide us in our mission journey, I think that would be super great, like not even kidding. Maybe you could like consider that someday, somehow, but yeah, I would love to see you on our mission faculty, and because your life story and your journey overall, I think it would be a great help for us to just have you and also have this human positive energy going through. I think I love it all. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Mama Diara. Thank you. Now Jerome is going to find a new assignment for me. Thank you so much. Thank you. And yes, I'd be willing to. Definitely, I'd be willing to. Whatever way I can support, I'm more than happy to. Thanks.
Well, we have a couple of questions in the chat box. So I'll start off by Sylvia's question. What are some things or routines that help you get ready for or through difficult days?
Okay, thank you. Exercise is something that I incorporated into my routine about 5 years ago. I didn't start out doing that, but I'm glad that I had a struggle with weight, and that's how I got really curious about fitness, and it has become a part of my routine. So I love to run in the morning, usually 5 kilometers when I can go all the way, or sometimes just 2. Okay, so that really helps in the morning. It clears your head. It helps you to breathe better and just prepares you for the challenges ahead. So find a routine, especially an exercise routine, that is helpful. Before you go to bed, it also helps to read. I know that I'm not as faithful to that as I should be, but I know the reading is such a good exercise to have before you go to bed. Like I said, it's impossible for me to talk about myself without talking about my faith. I also believe in prayer, so I love to pray. It definitely helps me to relieve all the worry and all the stress. When I know that I've prayed and I've committed everything that is troubling me, my mind is free and I'm happy. And that's how I have this positive energy that people are always talking about. It's not because I never feel sad, but once I lay my worries and my fears and my doubts and everything to God in prayer, I definitely feel a lot better. So physical and spiritual. It helps to exercise, which is what I do. I love to run. For you, it might be something else. I love to run. I love to read. And I definitely take care of my spirit as well. I love to pray. That definitely gives me a lot of peace. It does. So these are some of my routines every day.
Thank you for sharing that. Sylvia, I hope your question was answered. Diana has asked if you can drop your email, which I've done for you, Mary. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, it is.
Mugabe asks, if you are interested in multiple things, multiple stuff, how do you connect the dots and find your voice or your purpose?
Okay, thank you. So you need to know what is a hobby, and you also need to know what you can make a career out of. Did I mention that I sing as well? But I'm not trying to compete with Beyonce. No. I'm at ALU teaching. I have never tried to compete with Beyonce, nor attended any Nigerian Idol show or Project Fame or anything. So I sing, but I know that I'm not trying to make a career out of that. So I'm at the choir in my church. I sing, I've always sang, but I'm not making a career out of it. So I said it's okay for you to have multiple interests. My younger sister is studying to be an engineer and she loves to paint, but that's a hobby. So you need to know which of your many interests you're going to make a hobby and which of them you're going to make a career out of. It's so important, like I said, to focus on your areas of strength. I can out-teach Beyonce in class, but boy, will she out-sing me. She will definitely out-sing me on any stage. So I am focusing on my strengths. You need to ask yourself, what are you really, really good at, and focus on that. And it's okay to explore your many different interests. And to also answer your question, Asen, you need to show that you can excel at one thing that you're actually really good at. And somehow the dots start to connect, but you need to achieve excellence in one thing. So if you have 100 talents, you're better off making excellent results with one talent, and then you start to connect the dots to all the others. So start from one thing rather than expend your energy on 100 different things at the same time. And otherwise you become a jack of all trades. You know the famous saying, master of none, and nobody wants to be a master of none. So try to focus on one thing at a time, excel at it, and then you gradually start to expand. There's an interesting concept actually in entrepreneurship called serial entrepreneurship. And those who've gone in to be serial entrepreneurs have started maybe 10 different businesses, but it started with one successful business, okay? So they didn't set up 10 companies at the same time. No, they set up one company, they excelled at it, made it grow, sold it off, started the second, the third. So always start with that one thing you're really good at, and then you can progress gradually to all the others. That's my take on our sense question. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Emmanuel says we should have Faculty's Got Talent. I second that completely. And we'll see if we can make that happen at some point.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens with the campus live team. We could set that up. I'm pretty sure about that. See if we have Eric. Damilola says you already have a lovely speaking voice. Imagine how good the singing one would be. Oh,
Thank you.
Elvis says, I have a nice voice as well, apparently. Thank you very much, Elvis.
Yeah.
Daminola as well says, so specialist as opposed to generalist. Taking it back to what you were saying, to really concentrate on one thing, be an expert at it, and then branch out to different things. I think it comes back to breadth and depth. That the deeper you get into one thing, then you branch out and make things a bit larger to be able to connect the dots. Yes, Arsene, exactly. Finding a niche, that was very insightful. Thank you. Focus on one. Love that. Okay. Emmanuel, my SPD intern, has inserted a feedback form into the chat box. Please take a little moment and fit it in. It takes really 2 to 3 minutes, not even. Provide us a bit of feedback on how you felt the session went today. And if you would like to see anything different, please do let us know what you'd like to see, who you'd like to hear from. And we'll try and make that happen as much as possible. I guess we have the time for maybe a couple of last questions. So if any of you have any questions in mind that pop into mind, please do ask anyone on the call. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it to Mary to say a couple of last passing words before we end this session and before we end the week and move into the weekend.
Thank you so much, Jerome. Thank you guys for having me. It was just such a blast. I enjoyed myself. I hope you can tell. It was such a blessing to be here. I had so much fun. And I cannot get enough of ALU, right? Jerome and I, this is actually our very first interaction, but you would think that we were friends the entire time. Yeah. There's just something amazing about the work culture at ALU. It just isn't. It's incredible how we're so accepting of each other and respectful of each other. It's incredible. So thank you guys for having me. I'm a teacher, so of course I'm going to round up with a summary in 3 points. First things first, you need to upskill yourself, okay? You need to upskill yourself. Your tech skills are very important, but your soft skills are also important. So upskill yourself, find out what skills you're lacking in, upskill yourself. Second point, relationships. Establish good relationships and maintain them over the years. So I'm still able to reach out to like my classmates from my master's and ask them to be guest speakers. The other day I had a faculty asking me, do you know a HR specialist? And I reached out to someone I did high school with, and she actually came in. She's actually a HR specialist as a guest speaker on, one of his sessions. So establish and maintain good relationships over the years and never stop learning. Have a lifelong learner's mindset. As long as you're willing to learn new things, you might be the only 50-something-year-old coding with 20-something-year-olds 30 years from now, because you never stop learning, you never stop growing, okay? So those would be the 3 takeaways I want you to remember. Upskill yourself, establish good relationships and maintain them, okay? And then never stop learning. Continue to learn, you'll continue to grow. Thank you so much, guys, for having me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. This has been a super energetic and super positive session. I'm really, really happy to have had you. I'm going to send out a massive shout out to my 2 SPD interns, Emmanuel and Shakila, for working on getting Mary with us today and establishing the whole logistics of everything. Thank you so much once again, Mary. Thank you for all the students who managed to make time for the session today. If you want to go through it again, the session has been recorded and will be made available as soon as possible. And I'm still admitting people into the call. We're 5 minutes out, near to the end. But the session will be made available to you through our CD YouTube channel, which Shakira will be working on putting online as soon as possible. And thank you so much, everyone, for the amazing feedback. Thank you, Faith. Thank you, Isaac. And thank you for all the questions, the curiosity. And we really hope that you've taken away, those precious gems. Keep them in your pocket, take them out from time to time, look at them, listen to them again, and make sure you keep some of them really, really close to heart, because that's what counts and that's what makes the impact at the end of the day. So thank you, everyone. Have an amazing weekend ahead, and we'll see each other pretty soon.
Thank you, Jerome. Great
Thank
job
you, Mary.
today. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shakila. Thank you. Enjoy your weekend, guys. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.